Welcome to Networking with Nathaniel, a podcast that I started a little over a year ago, selfishly, so I could talk to high-level individuals, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and the like. So I could just, rub elbows, not shoulders, schmooze with people, learn from, and hopefully provide value to you. If this is your first time here, hang out for a little bit, see if you're going to get any value in it, and then please give me a thumbs up on the video so we can reach more people. If you're returning, smash that like button right now because you're coming back for a reason. We are recording this ahead of time. If you're seeing this in October, I am hopefully in the throngs of baby number 3, and we've just had baby number 3, and we're enjoying our time with he or she. I have the pleasure of introducing today Felix Becker. Born in Germany, moved to the United States at 15 years old, and he was actually in the Air Force as well. A father of 2 kids. And he's had a medical practice for a little while now. He still does that. He dabbles in the medicine field, doing cash only now. He mentioned that he does no insurance dealings anymore, and more power to you for that, Felix. He is a real estate investor. We met through the Sub2 community, but his primary focus, his passion right now is helping other people grow their personal development, their businesses as a success coach. So without further ado, Felix, welcome, brother. I hope I did you justice there.
I
I've got a
think you
little
did a fine
long-winded.
job.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Um, I was on your podcast. It hasn't come out quite yet as of this recording,
Right.
but I had such a great time with you, and we really connected very well. And afterwards, we started talking. I was like, man, he's got to come on and start giving some of his value and his knowledge to our audience as well. So I appreciate you being here on what is it, Thursday right now? This will be, um, like I mentioned, dropping in October, pre-recorded because of the baby thing. So I appreciate you being, taking time out of your day to join us right now. I mentioned that you're a success coach. What is it kind of that fills your day? What are you typically working on?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. And first of all, thank you for that wonderful introduction because really, if anything, just barely skims the surface of what my
Yeah, yeah.
life has been all about, right? And that's really why I have turned to life coaching now because I've had such a wide variety of experiences over the course of my own lifetime, and in terms of what fills my day, well, a lot of it actually is my own podcast. And the only reason I mentioned that is I started having conversations with other people on my podcast for very similar reasons as you did. I was trying to figure out, who other coaches were and what they do and how they help people. And it has morphed into something much more than that. It has morphed into having incredible conversations with any amazing person who's out there. But the fundamentals of it are still the same, right? Who are you? What do you do? And how do you help others? Because at the end of the day, I can tell you through all of my experiences that I've had in life, whether that was academic, in medicine, in the military, personal relationships, it doesn't matter. Collaboration beats competition, and
Mm,
working together towards a common good, towards a greater good, towards something other than ourselves helps everybody involved. And that's one of the things I really even enjoy the Sub2 community. It is not about any one of us individually. It is about what we can do together as a community, as a group, as a collection of people in a collaborative space, because that's really where the magic happens. And that's also what I try to do with my own coaching practice is showcase people just the magic that happens when people collaborate and work together. And it's not just making it about yourself. And I come from, obviously, if you look at my history, there's been a lot of times when I've been in positions when it had to be about myself, right? You don't get
mm,
into a good college if you don't have the best GPA or the thickest resume. Same thing with medical school or residency training after that, right? So it always there's plenty of times when it happened about me, but really where my interest has always been is in that collaborative space, working with people as
mm.
a group, as a team, right? I think that answers your question, someone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's yeah. and it leads to more now, as you're very well aware, Felix, is you have navigated these areas that are seemingly cutthroat, right? You gotta have a high GPA, and you gotta beat other people out in order to be able to get into the right schools. You have to have stacked your resume so you can get the right residencies, and when you get the residencies, you got to prove yourself and beat all the other doctors out. How were you able to make that shift? You kind of said, it's always been there, the collaboration. How were you able to make the shifts between the two?
That's something that I really didn't learn until after the fact in many ways, which is why I want to turn around and help others get to that clarity much sooner than I ever got to it. You're absolutely right. It's definitely cutthroat. And that's one of the things that I actually dislike about the medical field. If you look at any of the medical training that we do, it's very individualistic. When I was in my surgical training, for example, it was always, this is your decision. It's your patient. You're the doctor. You're in charge. It's your choice. No one else's. No one is coming to save you. It's only
Mm,
on you. Any of our board exams or any of the hundreds of exams I took in medical school, right? Those are not collaborative in nature. So we are conditioned into this individualistic approach that we are the only ones here to help others. When in reality, it works much better if we work together for the patient, right? When I don't do it because of me, when I can get off my white and high horse and say, you know what? I'm only human. I'm not perfect and I don't know everything. But what I do know is how to find the answers, or I know who knows how to find the answers for you, Mr. or Mrs. Patient, right? And that's one thing that really took me a long time to realize because I was conditioned for the longest time into this individualistic thinking, into this grandiosity that I was the doctor. Oh my God, I'm the doctor. I get to make the
yeah.
decisions about your
Yeah.
health.
Mm.
And it's something that always bothered me. And it wasn't until many, many years in when I realized why it bothered me. Because I'm only human. I'm not special. I just did a lot of hard things, but it doesn't make me special. At the end of the day, we're all human. And working together is where the magic happens.
Yeah, that's amazing. I like that. I'm curious, as far as you mentioned surgical a couple times. Is that like where your focus is? As I also kind of highlighted it in the intro there that you still are practicing. Just
Yeah.
I think you said cash only, right? No more insurance. Like, what does that practice look like?
Yeah, so I was trained, very classically trained as a general surgeon in my training, actually. And when I finished my residency training, I went active duty with the Air Force because they paid
Okay.
for some years of my medical school. So I owed them some time. And I was stationed at St. Louis University. There's actually a base at St. Louis University that the Air Force has, and it's for trauma training. So every medical personnel in the Air Force has to come either through the unit at St. Louis or Baltimore every 2 or 3 years to get spun up on trauma. And so we were fully integrated into the St. Louis University civilian staff. Honestly, if you walked into that hospital, you wouldn't know who was Air Force and who was civilian. So that was really nice. But that's where I did trauma surgery for 4 years in a level one trauma center, inner city, safety net hospital. There was nothing we didn't see. It was honestly rather brutal. Until 22, St. Louis was the city with the highest homicide rate per capita in the country. And so
Wow.
it makes absolute sense why the Air Force has a trauma training unit there. I mean, where else can you train people before deploying them to war on
Mm.
how to take care of trauma patients, if not in one of the most violent cities in the US, right? So St. Louis and Baltimore. Um, but I got divorced and my kids moved away from me and I did the long distance dad thing for my last year in St. Louis and it was just absolute horror. And so I ended up following them to Toledo, Ohio. Not that I wanted to be here for any other reason other than the kids. That's really the only reason I moved is to be closer to my kids. And when I moved here, I transitioned full time into wound care, actually. That allowed me a lot more free time to spend with the family now, spent more time with the kids. Instead of being on call every 3 or 4 days and in the hospital for 30 plus hours at a time and having my nights and weekends eroded by the work, all of that was freedom now, right? I had time to spend with my kids.
Mm.
So I've been in wound care now for the last 5 years, and I was part of a healthcare system. and I got really frustrated. Again, going back to that collaboration aspect, that most of my work was spent on creating documentation to satisfy billing or legal requirements. It had nothing to do with actual patient care. As a matter of fact, I really wasn't helping most people because most of the time was just spent on CYA, cover your ass. It wasn't spent on actually helping people, right? We actually call it CYA, right?
Yeah.
That's med speak. So I got frustrated by that because if I went into medicine for one reason, it was to help other people and work with them together on fixing their problems. And I couldn't do that as part of a healthcare system, and so I left. And nowadays, I just accept cash for the patients that I do have, and it's quite simple, right? If I work for a system and get paid from reimbursements through a health insurance company, well, then I'm working for them. I'm not working for a patient, right? I
Mm,
work for whoever pays me. And so
yeah.
if a patient pays me directly, I work for that patient and I can do whatever they need me to do. I'm now
Mm,
no longer constrained by all these regulatory requirements in my documentation, for example, right? If I want
yeah.
to spend an hour with my patient, I can spend an hour with my patient. And it doesn't mean it doesn't make a difference to me, but it means the world to them if I do that. And so
Yeah.
there's true power in actually freeing yourself from those systems, stepping outside of that, and going back into that collaboration with patients. Say, look, I am here for you. I'm here to help you. That's also why I enjoy coaching so much, because
Yeah.
I can work with my clients on helping them, and it's a collaboration again, right? I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm here to help you figure out what to do with your life so that you can live a better one, right?
Yeah.
And whether that's as a coach or as a physician, right? It's the same thing. It's a collaboration with my patients, my clients, the people in my life on how we can make the world a better place for all of us.
Yeah. I love that. I think I I'm in the VA system, being a veteran myself,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it is an absolute tool that I use when is necessary,
Yes.
because
Yes.
it's pretty awful otherwise. I can only imagine, it compared. It's been a long time since I've been outside of the VA system, so I don't really
Right.
know what that is. But
You
yeah,
know,
the
it's
way you're describing it is you're working for the all the loopholes and all the things that the insurance company needs provided to them. Sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
No, no, I was just gonna say I'm in the VA too, and I
Mm,
actually had an appointment just yesterday, and I can tell you it is perhaps doubly frustrating for me because I know how the system works and I know
yeah.
why they ask certain questions.
Mm,
And I can advocate for myself because I know what how the system works. I know what I need. I know what I want. And it's even worse for me because I can see the inefficiencies. I can see the red tape more so
yeah.
than most people. I mean, if you don't know anything about how the healthcare system works on the other side of that curtain, you don't know any better, right? If someone tells
Right.
you, well, that's just how it's done, that's just how it's done. Whereas in my
Yeah.
mind, it's like, no, that's not true. I mean, I actually got into a bit of an argument with the physician yesterday at the VA because she was saying, well, we have to practice defensive medicine, which goes back to all the legal and documentation requirements to make sure
Mm,
that you are CYA against medical lawsuits.
yeah.
And I had that discussion with her. I said, no, I absolutely disagree with you. I think defensive medicine is a problem. We should not be practicing defensive medicine. We should be practicing offensive medicine, right? We should find problems before they become problems.
Yeah.
We should actually help patients get better instead of trying to practice medicine in a way to protect ourselves, right? It's not about us, it's about the patient.
Yeah.
So that's why I think we the whole idea of defensive medicine is wrong. But no, I agree with you. The VA is both a
Yeah.
blessing and a curse.
Um,
I'm
yeah.
happy to have access to it, but being able to see the red tape and the inefficiencies and all the loopholes and knowing, even trying to figure out how to navigate a complex system, knowing what I know is mind boggling. It's
Yeah.
frustrating. It's yeah, absolutely. So I hear you on that. I hear you on that.
The defensive medicine. Correct me if this analogy is a mistake, but is this like the circuit breaker in my car pop, or the circuit breaker? No,
Mhm.
the fuse in my car pops, and I just go and replace the fuse, and it pops again, and I go and replace the fuse instead of finding out what the heck's actually popping the fuse. Is that
Well,
kind of
it's yeah, maybe I'm not sure. I need to think about that one a little bit more to
Okay.
see if that analogy works. No,
Yeah.
defensive medicine is all about making sure your documentation is so tight that no patient could ever file a lawsuit against you,
Oh, okay. See why, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's maybe more akin to some of the lease agreements we have in our real estate holdings, right?
Mm,
Making sure that we are so tight that it's easy to maybe avoid an eviction, right? How can we get a resident out of the who doesn't pay rent? How can we get them out of our home, out of our house, out of our apartments without filing an eviction? How can we speed that process up, right? That's
mm,
because that's protecting us. But
right.
right, or even in the creative side of things, how can we avoid foreclosure? How can we make our documentation so tight that no one can ever foreclose against us?
Mm,
That's the defensive part, instead of the
yeah.
offensive part and saying, this is a great deal, I want to find a way to make this happen so I can make money, and I can provide safe and reliable housing for the people in my community.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so there I did have another question on the you said you've transitioned into wound care. I'm just
Yes.
curious, like what exactly is wound care?
That's a good question. So the interesting thing is, I'll give you two sides of it. On the one hand, wound care, right? Chronic wounds. People sometimes have wounds that don't heal for months or even years. And there's obviously many physiologic reasons for that. But if you think about it, if you go back to the advent of what medicine is, right? The first shamans, the first medical doctors, if you will, for the most part, that came out of wounds, right? We were living somewhere in the wilderness, and what was hurting us the most were traumatic wounds, mostly sustained from our environment. So we have known about wounds for tens of thousands of years, and that's really where medicine truly came in, right? I mean, we didn't treat high blood pressure and diabetes when we really first started as medical providers, right?
Mm,
When we had people in our communities that specialized in providing healthcare to our community, it was more about wounds. And yet,
yeah.
most people in medicine know nothing, even at the very basic level, on how to treat wounds. It goes so far that wound care is a specialty, if you will. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people between doctors and nurses and other people involved in the world of wound care. It's a big, big, big industry, billions of dollars a year, and yet it is not a recognized specialty.
Huh.
How weird is that?
Yeah, interesting.
And it's you have this dichotomy of wound care being something so very basic to our medical provisions, and yet something that we don't even recognize as a specialty, even though it is a billion dollar industry.
Interesting. I mean, is that something that like the advent of penicillin or things like that have harmed?
Not so much harmed as helped, right? And antibiotics
Okay.
have helped a lot when it comes to any sort of healthcare provision.
I
Of
mean,
course,
harmed
on
in the sense like it's not because it's not being recognized. Sorry, let me clear. Yeah, it's not being recognized as a specialty. That's in that sense harmed.
yeah,
Yeah,
historically, I'm not sure why
yeah,
this hasn't come about. If you think about it, as a surgeon, I inflict wounds all the time, right? For me to get
yeah,
into your belly, I have to cut you open. And I always
yeah,
joke, I am legally allowed to cut you open, make you bleed, and cut shit out of your body
yeah,
and not go to jail.
yeah,
How weird is that?
yeah.
Right? So my specialty actually involves creating wounds, but my
Mm,
specialty really never really trained me on how to heal wounds.
right. Yeah,
So even a
interesting.
specialty that's specifically designed to create wounds isn't trained on how to heal wounds. I mean,
Mm,
it's just again, just kind of a weird aspect of medicine. And so, why wound care is so much of the redheaded stepchild in medicine? Honestly, historically, I'm not the person to ask. That was
yeah,
happening well before I ever entered into medicine. But it
yeah.
is a huge, huge, huge industry because there are so many people, millions of people in the U.S. alone, who are living with chronic wounds, and with our obesity epidemic, with our diabetes epidemic, even with COVID, right? A few years ago, COVID created a huge amount of wounds because people were just languishing in beds for a long, long time, and that creates
Oh,
wounds.
interesting. Yeah.
So if you look at our social composition, and what's happening to us environmentally as a culture, we have lots and lots and lots of reasons to create wounds in people. And yet we don't fully understand it to the point where we can actually heal these wounds. Now, for me, myself, I don't believe in wounds that don't heal. Physiologically, biologically, it makes no sense that a person should have a wound, open skin, for months or years at a time. It makes no sense.
Mm.
And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It just means that we haven't asked the right questions. You haven't found the right person to ask the right questions. And I'm not saying I'm the right person all the time. I mean, there's plenty of times when I scratch my head and we have tried everything that we have available to us in the closet here, and nothing has worked. So there's still something else going on that we just don't know. But unlike other specialties, if you look at mental health, for example, right? If you look at the psychology and psychiatry side of things, there is no single blood test that could figure out whether you have depression or anxiety or PTSD or schizophrenia.
Yeah.
There's no blood test. There's no objective marker for that. There's no genetic test. There's no genetic predisposition that has ever been shown to be affected by any of those conditions. We treat depression with serotonin receptor antagonists because we're saying in depression, your serotonin levels are low. Well, if you look at the actual data, first of all, no one has ever really tested serotonin levels in depressed people to the point where we can say serotonin levels actually are low. And if you look at the data comparing these SSRIs versus other medications, the outcomes are all the same. So if that's the case, is serotonin really the reason that depressed people are depressed?
Hmm.
Right? And so in the mental health world, we have no such markers. In the wound care world, we have lots of markers. We can take biopsies. There's now incredible fluorescent imaging where I can actually see live on camera the amount of biofilm and bacteria that are crawling in your wound, right? There's incredible amount of objective data that I can identify in wound care, and yet it is not a recognized specialty. Weird.
Mm. Yeah.
But a huge problem.
Okay. Enough about wounds at this point.
Yes, thank you, please.
I'm grateful that I don't have any right now because it's making me a little. No, I'm not squeamish about it, but I want to get to what you're. It seems like very. I mean, you're passionate about the wound care as well, but passion that you have is helping people
Yes.
clearly, and that's transitioned you into being a success coach. How long have you been at this success work venture? How did you what kind of came about that you made this pivot into that?
Yeah. So the irony of me becoming a coach actually lies in the fact that it comes out of real estate.
Mm.
So I got increasingly frustrated with my career in medicine for the reasons that I've already alluded to. I really wasn't helping people. And I was looking for my way out. And I think like anybody looking for a way out of their career, the first thing that pops up in your Google search is real estate. As is the second thing, a third thing, and fourth thing, right? It's
Yeah.
everybody always looks for a way out in real estate, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
But within real estate, there's a community called Bigger Pockets, as some people might know, and they have a podcast. And I used to listen to that podcast religiously. And Brandon Turner was the host at the time. And I remember there was an episode when he was talking about his own coach and the impact his coach has had on his own life.
Mm.
Now, his coach, Jason Dries, I've actually talked to him. He's a great guy. Also has a fantastic podcast of his own and a fantastic coaching practice. So Brandon was talking about the impact that Jason had on him. Now, up until that point, I was conditioned through the way I was raised, my family, and everyone else, that coaches were swindlers and snake oil salesmen. And who needs a coach anyways?
Mm.
And so here I was now listening to this episode where Brandon was speaking so highly about his coach, Jason. And I was wondering, well, here's this self-made multimillionaire real estate magnate. Why would he need a coach?
Yeah.
Why would someone so successful as him, self-made, have a coach? It makes no sense. I mean, if you want to spend your money on something, go travel the world, right? Or donate it to a charity, but don't just give it as a person who calls himself a coach.
Yeah.
And so I started then, that was my first curiosity into the coaching world. I was like, well, why would someone like Brandon have a coach? And that's when I discovered really coaching for the first time for myself, and the power and the magic that comes from having a coach. Now, as a side note to all of that, I've had my own mental health challenges. I've been struggling with depression for years. I've been through therapy and on antidepressants, and I've done all the things. But it's never really helped me. And part of the problem was, at least with therapy, it was like, can we please stop talking about my mom? All I want to know is what I can do today to create a better tomorrow for myself. And the
Mhm.
therapists that I've had have never been able to do that. It was always past tense. It was always oriented towards the past. Where have I come from? Versus my past is my past. It's done. It's over. Nothing I can change about it. It is what it is. But what I do have control over is the here and now. The Felix that's sitting right here. I have control over what I'm going to do from now on out. And that's what I'm trying to work on. And that's exactly what I found in coaching, right? Because coaching is future oriented. Coaching is not past tense.
Yeah.
Coaching is future tense. So all of a sudden, through my own coaching experience, I was able to find some of the answers that I have been looking for, right? What do I want my future to look like? Who do I want to be? And how do I get there? And so when I realized that, I went through a life coach training certification myself. I started incorporating some of that into my medical practice at the time with some of my
Oh,
patients, and but still being confined by the medical system at the time, I found much more freedom in having coaching clients, being able to spend time with them, not being constrained by any regulatory or billing or legal demands, and really just working with people on their problems.
yeah.
And that was incredibly liberating for me,
Mm.
mind blowing, to be honest with you. The amount of impact I could have in very few sessions with incredible people. My very first few clients were real estate investors I met through Step 2, actually. And with them, I'm still friends with them to this day. And
Yeah.
they've made some incredible transformations. And yeah, so that's really how that came about. SuccessFactor as a company is only about maybe a year and a half old now. I actually went into that with the entrepreneurial mindset at the time that I first need to have coaching clients. And once I make enough money as a coach, that's when I can say this is something and I can create an LLC. I didn't
Mm.
go about creating the LLC first and then solicited clients. I went out there just like, our very own Pace Morby always says, just go out there and take action, take imperfect action, right? And that's what I
Yeah.
did. I went out there and just said, I need clients who wants one, who wants me as a coach. And I started making money as a coach. And that's, I took that imperfect action. And that's when I then turned around and said, you know what, this would be better set up as a company. And that's then when I created the LLC that's now SuccessFact. And that's when I took it from there.
Yeah. I love that so there's a couple things that you mentioned that the psychology or the psychiatrist aspect of things. Well, I've had some really bad ones as well since I got out of the Marine Corps, but I've been fortunate to get in front of a couple that were a little bit more present and future focused, like you're saying. And I know you don't consider yourself one, but a personal development, a success coach is in a sense like that psychiatrist or that psychologist for you, because we are looking future. How do you bring your future self to the now, and how can we deal with what you're having, the issues that you're having now? How can we work through those together, right? It doesn't, yes, your past plays into your present, but the past is past. Now it's
Right.
time to be dealing about now and the future. And then you mentioned just doing the action. I'm in the midst of that as well right now, where it's like, do we start setting up all these things, or do we go out and get people who are actually interested in the potential of what we're talking about doing? Zach Bush and I are putting together a health and fitness and nutrition program to help people take control of those aspects of their lives. And it's like, do we go build this 12-week program? No, it doesn't really make sense, because we don't have anybody that's interested in the 12-week program yet. We can build the
Right.
12-week program once we get the people involved. That's like,
That's right.
Jesse Stanton, one of my coaches, was on my podcast yesterday. Yesterday being September 11th, so
Yeah.
a month ago at this point, and he mentioned this story of, there's a pottery class, and the instructor breaks the class up into two segments, and he says that one part of the class is going to be based on the quantity of pots that they make. The other is going to be graded on the quality of pots that they make at the end of the semester. And
Mm.
so the you know they all go about the quality. They're looking at books and they're theorizing about how to make the best pot, while the other group is just going out there and they're making pots. And at the end of the semester, the group that just went out and made pots ends up making way far better pots than the group that just theorized about how to make the best pots, because they went out and they learned how to make a freaking pot. And so just go out and take action. It's just it's great. It's a great story to kind of like bring that all into perspective, is that you learn by doing. It's great to like, watch YouTube and read books and things like that, but you got to shut that off at some point and go start taking action, because that's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to figure out, okay, this is how much, for the pot reference, like this is how much pressure I need on the wheel. This is how much water I need. These are the right tools to use. This is where I take it off and I put it in the kiln or what,
Yeah.
I had a little bit of pottery experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. um,
You know,
yeah. So what is it? I want to make
actually,
sure that. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I no, I actually wanted to take that pottery analogy a little bit further,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
you went in a different direction with that than I thought you would. When you
Okay.
said the instructor broke the group into two groups of people, right?
Mhm.
I, in my mind, where I thought you were going to go was one group gets to be shown step by step how to make pots, right? How to turn on the wheel, how to figure out how much clay to use, the amount of water, how to spin the wheel, how to get different shapes on the wheel, right? And you get taught step by step all these little nuances. The other group gets shown a finished pot and said, just go make that
Oh,
pot.
yeah.
And if you think about that, in real estate, we always talk about this analysis paralysis. And I think that comes from people get shown the finished pot and said, all right, now you do it, versus the other approach where it's like, all right, that's the finished product that we're going to get to in like 3 months. Right
Yeah.
now, all I want you to focus on is how to turn on the wheel and figure out what speed it needs to be at, right?
Yeah.
So taking these baby steps, just doing a little bit thing at a time, that whole idea of 1% better every day, right? Just do a little bit
Yeah.
is what's ultimately going to get you the result. So I'm sorry, I may
No,
have
no.
totally thrown you a line of thought there,
Yeah. That's
off
not the
kilter,
story that was in this book. Yeah. Yeah.
but
But,
but
yeah.
that's where I thought you were going to go
Yeah.
when you said that they were split into two groups.
Yeah. Well, I do like that analogy too, because a lot of the times people don't, we want to get to the end result so fast, and you don't realize that in order for you to get to Z, you need to know A, B, C, D, E, F, because G is unknown right now.
Right,
Until you get to F, you don't know what the heck G and H and I are. So you have to work through the process to be able to get to Z.
right.
Um, what is, um, I want to be respectful of time because we have a call. You have a call coming up. I think it's a,
Yeah.
coaching call.
Unfortunately, I don't know how that
Yeah,
got onto my I don't know how
yeah.
that got onto my calendar. I
Somebody
usually
needs
try to keep
help,
an hour
and
free, but it's
yeah.
like
um, what does work coming in and working with you as a success coach look like? Is it I'm just going to give you some example. Like, is it an 8 week, a 16 week? Is it once a week? Is it once a month? Like, is it group? Is it individual? Or do you have the
yeah.
gamut?
No, that's a fantastic question, and I will say that I am classically trained as a life coach, so it's all about you. Now, do I have some, programs that I use loosely as a guidance to go along? Yeah, absolutely, I do. But I don't believe in the fact that everybody learns at the same pace. We all come
Mm,
from different places in life. We're all wanting to get to different places in our lives, and so there's no one size fits all approach. It's a very individualized thing. Now, I have a collection of exercises, like I said, and tools that I pull from, but it's very individualized to your needs. And so it's not a 6 week engagement, 8 week engagement. It's however long it takes. I would say the average engagement for most of my clients, 5 to 6 sessions. And then
okay.
they go off on their own and they're perfectly happy and they never come back. Right. Or maybe here and there every once in a while down the road. Most people meet once a week. Some people who are incredibly busy, like one of my last physician clients that I had, very busy at work. And so it was easier for him to meet every 2 weeks. But
Okay.
it's very much, my focus is on you. It's not about me and my programs, right? My coaching is about you and what I can do to help you get better. And so it's very much focused on your needs, wants, and desires.
Okay. So I would come to you with it sounds like maybe this is where I'm trying to get to, or this is where I'm stuck at. How do I work through these things together?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
And we'll get you unstuck, and we'll get your mind untwisted, and we'll
Yeah,
get you working on working towards something better, greater, right? A better version of yourself in the future. And like I said, it doesn't take a whole lot. My average engagement is only about 5 or 6 sessions per client.
I love it. Yeah, so this is something that I talked about with when Creighton was on, Creighton Bertrand, and he was a coach of ours a little over a year ago at this point. Is that you go in? I went in thinking like, okay, he's going to get me from A to Z, right? For example, and it was going to be this 12-week thing, and these, and at the end, I'm going to be all happy and whatever. But come to realize that he was just giving us tools for us to use for the rest of our lives. And
Mhm.
yes, we did do some specific focus things, but a lot of it was like, hey, this is how you deal with things when they come to you, right? This is how you can plan for the future, and this is how you set goals and look backwards at the goals that where you've been and how you got there, and just all those things. And like, oh man, you cover a lot of ground in 6 weeks, and then like you
Yeah.
said, you do it, and then you go like, hey, go little, go fly on your own, you're doing fantastic now. Yeah.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
I we You asked me on your podcast, which I thought was a really cool thing. You asked me to ask the next guest a question,
That's
essentially.
right. Yes.
Um, and so I haven't been able to, because mine has not aired yet. I haven't gotten to see what the answer to the next person's yet. I am looking forward to that, and I'm going to ask you the question that I asked the next guest on your podcast, and that is, when your time on this earth is done, Felix, I have a guess at where this is going, but when your time on this earth is done, and you're off in heaven or whatever it is you believe, what do you want to be remembered for from the people that you've left behind here?
Yeah. That's very simple. That I was a loving and caring person who really loved and cared about everyone. I have this idea inside my head, and it really came from the fact that I mean, my kids are now a little bit older, but if you think about even with your kids, maybe the cartoons that 3, 4, 5, 6 year old kids watch. It's all about these utopian societies where everybody's happy, and if problems arise, someone has the solutions. Everybody works together. There's work for everyone. There's food for everyone, right? Nothing can be insurmountable. And if you really think about the real world, that's the furthest we can be from the truth. And yet, those are the lies we feed to our children. So, in my mind, why don't we create that world? If we want our children to believe that that's what the world looks like, why wouldn't we want to create that for ourselves as adults?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's
it's
what I'm
kind of,
trying to do.
yeah. Now that you say that, it's like, wait, why haven't we done that already? We've all grown up on that, yeah, kind of thing. It's funny, it's, it just jumped into my head right now, is that when we are young too, people, older people are always asking, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you hear, firefighter, basketball player, whatever, doctor, but you never hear the answer as happy, right?
Right.
Content,
Right.
you know. So why aren't we building that into our little ones right now? Is like being happy, something that I was so surprised yesterday. Our youngest, he's not even 2 yet. We were sitting down at dinner, and he went, I love mom, I love Harland, I love dad, I love Cody, and I love I. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's so amazing, because you
That is
should love
beautiful.
you. Yeah, I was getting a little teary eyed right now, but
Yeah.
of course the I guess I love I love
Yeah.
me. Oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
The other question I have for you, Felix, is do you have like maybe 3 books that pop into your head that have either helped you get to where you're going, help you deal with such and such, or just um, things that you something that you find really passionate, really passionate about, you really excited about?
No, that's a terrific question. I'm a big reader. I love reading books, and it's one of the things that my daughter even picked up. My oldest daughter's a bookworm, and without me even trying, right? It's just so
Yeah.
beautiful to see that in your own children. So yes, I think there's three books that I can very easily say that have had a profound impact on my life in very interesting ways. So the first one, I'm not quite done reading it. Almost done, is
Okay.
the myth of normal by Gabor Mate, and it really opens my eyes to all the little trauma, and I want to use trauma here very loosely for a second, but all the trauma on nervous systems, uh, the way it affects our nervous systems in our development, both as young children, as
Hmm.
babies in utero, as adults, and how that shapes our own, not just mental health, but physical health as well. How it affects us as a culture, as a society, how it affects us as a human race, right? It's an absolutely fascinating read that has opened my own eyes, not just to myself, but to the world we live in, and how we create a lot of the problems that we face every day. It's a fantastic read. I think that should be mandatory reading for everybody, whether you are happy or not.
Hmm.
I think it really redefines and gives you a different perspective on how the world functions and what your place is within the world.
Love it.
The second book that I think should also be required reading for everybody, I think it should be high school required reading, to be honest with you, is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to smack people over the head with that book. But I think, you know, especially here in the United States, I've come to find we live this victim society. It's victimhood, right? It's like these
Mhm.
things are happening to me. Oh, woe is me, but it's not my fault. It's someone else who did that to me.
Yeah.
And when I read Extreme Ownership many years ago, that really changed things for me because it really gave me agency. It gave me the ability to say, no, I am actually in control of my life. It's actually my duty to live my life, not someone else's.
Good.
So yeah, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, fantastic read for anybody. And like I said, I think that should be required reading for every American, especially in high school.
Yeah.
The third book I'll throw out is a bit of a self plug here, but it's
Okay.
the Simple Networking Toolbook that I wrote, published about a year ago now, and it's based on. It's not a textbook. It's sort of based on the idea of old school friendship journals, where you have it's like about 7 or 8 pages per person to fill out with questions similar to the
Okay.
questions that I ask on the podcast, and some of the questions I asked you on my podcast came out of that book. But with old school friendship journals, what you do is you give that book to a friend, they fill it out, and they give it back to you, and then you can give it to another friend, and they fill it out, and 20 years later, it's a fun little thing to look back on. I still have mine from like third and fourth grade. It's kind of funny to look
Yeah,
back on
you
that,
mentioned
actually,
that. I've never even
right?
heard this before. Yeah.
Um, but I know. I feel like it's a social thing. Maybe
Yeah.
they were huge in Germany when I was growing up. Everybody had
Okay.
friendship journals. We filled out each other's. It
Huh.
was a big thing. But anyways, with my book, what you do is you fill out your portion, you give it to an amazing person, they fill out their person, but instead of returning it back to you, they give it to someone else who fills out their stuff, who gives it to someone else, who gives it to someone else. And so in the first edition, there's a spot for 100 people. So the book should go through 100 people that you would have otherwise no chance of meeting. And then ideally, at some point, the book will come back to you.
Huh.
Now that may take, with 100 people in there, the best guess for me is it'll take at least 2 years for the book to come back.
Yeah.
But as a result of that book, I bought 5 copies myself and sent them to people. I have met people that I otherwise would have not had a chance to meet at all. And some
Hmm.
of those relationships have become incredibly good friends. And it's been an absolutely mind-blowing experience so far, just over the course of the last year. Like I said, I published it about a year ago. I know I sent my copies out just around Thanksgiving time last year.
Okay.
And I at this point, I have no idea where the books are at anymore. But I have truly met some amazing people as a result of that book. It's
Yeah.
available on Amazon. If you go to my website, there's a link to it. And anybody can buy the book and you start your own networking chain, if you will. I am working on a second edition that's going to be a little shorter. So the turnaround
Okay.
time hopefully will be a little quicker,
Yeah.
with new questions, many of which come from the podcast. But it's just a fun social science experiment and really does the networking for you. You don't have to do anything but give the book to one person. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
Give the book to one person.
And well, I keep your fingers crossed. That comes
Yes,
back.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
You could just, instead of waiting for the second edition, don't do this. I'm just kidding, but you could just buy the first edition and just rip out like 80 of the
Oh yeah,
pages. Yeah,
you
yeah,
could do
yeah.
that too. You could do that too.
You brushed on it really quickly. What's the best way for people to reach out and connect with you, Felix?
I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. So if you search for my
Okay.
name on LinkedIn, you'll be able to find me. Otherwise, my contact info is you can connect with me through the website, successvalc.co. The .com, unfortunately, is taken by a domain scalper, and I'm not willing to pay the $6,000 or whatever it is that they want me to pay for a
Yeah.
stupid domain name. So it's successvalc.co. Otherwise, like I said, LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook as well, Instagram. I'm not super active on those platforms. LinkedIn is really where I hang out the most. But yeah, that's a good way to reach me.
Yeah, that's one that I'm not versed in at this point, but I keep getting told, "Hey, you should go on LinkedIn." I can't add another thing right now, but
No, no, you're
yeah,
so busy with your family. That's totally
yeah,
fine, man. You know,
I,
and that's kind of what I was saying earlier too, with the whole collaboration, right? And the magic that happens with people. I mean, social media on the one hand is a wonderful tool for us to stay connected with people we otherwise might not stay connected with. But
yeah,
on the other hand, it's really in that human to human interaction that the magic really happens, and knowing the people in your closest circles and staying close with them and staying in contact with them is honestly the most important thing. So I'm old school. I mean, I got the gray hair. I know life before
yeah,
social media. I know life before the internet, right?
yeah,
I grew up when we had one house, one phone in the house, and it was attached to
yeah,
the wall. My daughter
yeah,
always
yeah,
makes fun of me with that. Daddy, you grew up when phones were still attached to the wall.
yeah.
So I know life before this whole social media thing, and I got to tell you, as much as social media has gotten us closer, it has also driven us further apart.
100%. Yeah. Well, on that, I appreciate you. On that note, I'm gonna push you out here right
Yeah.
now.
All
I
right.
appreciate you
Bye.
being here. Yeah, I'm gonna boot you real quick. Hang out, hang tight, please. Uh, that was Felix Becker. I thought that that was going to be a fun one, and it was. That is networking with Nathaniel. I appreciate y'all being here. There was nobody live here because we recorded this a month ago. But if you got any value out of that, please like the video so this can reach more people. And if you're finding yourself back here again, subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when we go live and when new videos drop like that. Until next time, it was a pleasure.